Well, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about using Evergreen to complete inventory and do some shelf reading. So this is a project that I know a couple of our libraries are actually actively engaged in right now, and I know that we do have some representatives from a couple of those libraries who signed up today, so I'm hoping that they'll be here, so can defer to them to talk about kind of what the process is like on the front lines if they're willing. And then, of course, also the resident NC Cardinal expert at this is Benjamin, and he's here. So I'll probably ask him to pipe in occasionally. But I'm going to walk us through the general process. And our plan today is to basically look at the basic processes. And there are kind of two different ways that you can engage with inventory using Evergreen. So we'll look at both of those, and we'll look at why you might want to choose one versus the other. And both of them are very report based. So if you have never used the reporter before and you're getting ready to start an inventory of your library's materials, I do recommend going back and taking a look at some of our previous reports training videos. We do have some recordings of live webinars as well as some shorter demonstration videos, and that might help get you kind of over that initial hump of working with the reports aspect of the inventory process. We will be talking about the reports today, but if you're not familiar with running reports, it might just be good to go back and get a little bit of that basic foundational knowledge before you get really going with this project. In both cases, both of the reports we'll be looking at today, the basic version of them is fairly straightforward, so you don't need a lot of reports knowledge, but we will talk about some little tweaks that you can add to the reports if you wanted to kind of take them to the next level. And then we'll also talk about using buckets and how you can use buckets to kind of help you with dealing with missing items or items that did not come up in your inventory. So we'll talk about how those fit into the inventory process. So let's go ahead and talk about the basic inventory processes. So the first one, and this is I think what most people think of when they think of inventory, it's the fairly straightforward process of basically selecting a physical section of your library, whether this is a call number range or a shelving location that you're going to inventory. And then to use Evergreen to conduct that inventory, you would need to set up a mobile check-in station. So this really is just a laptop and a scanner. And if you can put it on a cart with wheels, that will make life easier for you. So it doesn't have to be very fancy. You could even do it without a scanner if you want to type barcodes in by hand, but I'd recommend a scanner. So get that set up. And go ahead and make sure that you can log into Evergreen on that mobile check-in station. Once you're in Evergreen, you'll navigate into the check-in screen and you'll add a check-in modifier of update inventory. And then you'll just go down that range or that shelving location and you'll scan each book. Once you've completed the section, then you'll run the report that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And that's going to give you a list of materials that it expected to find on the shelf that were not inventoried. So then you can take that report, you can add it to a bucket, and you can mark those items missing. So it's a fairly straightforward process in terms of the steps to it. You're basically you're completing that inventory by scanning your items. You're running a report to see what was missing, and then you're marking those items missing. And so, obviously this isn't going to count those items that are currently checked out or on hold or anything like that. So the report takes that into account. It's not going to bring up checked out items or items that are on hold. It's just going to bring up items that are marked as available but were not on the shelf. So this is, I think, probably the way most people do inventory, though if somebody does it differently, please let me know. And it's probably what you're going to want to use when working with a very large section. So let's take a look at the report that we recommend for this. So this is going to be, for those of you who are familiar with our reports, in our centralized reports templates folder. So that's going to be one of our shared templates. It's going to be in the inventory and weeding subfolder, and then within that it's a list. And the name of the report is Items by Owning Library Shelving Location and Status. And I was messing around with this report recently just to make sure that it was everything was working exactly how we wanted it to after the upgrade. And so when I put the put it back into the shared folder. I gave it this parenthetical of inventory list just to make it a little bit faster to find, because now, of course, we have this wonderful feature in our reports that allows you to filter by the name of the report. So let's go ahead and go into that, and I'll show you where to find it. And then we'll kind of take a step backwards and we'll look at the process of checking in. But I wanted to get the report running so it can run in the background while we're doing some other work. So to find the report, you're going to come here to the shared folders, and you're going to click on templates. And so this little caret here on the side, if you open that up, that expands it out so you can find all of the shared template folders that are available to you. And you're going to want to choose admin here. And then all of the reports that we have created in NC Cardinal to be shared widely are in our centralized reports templates folder. And then from here, you're going to look for your inventory and weeding. And we're going to hit that caret one last time. And this brings up the option to choose lists or counts. In this case, we want a list because we do want an itemized list of every single copy that we expected to find on that shelf. So I'm going to come in here. And there are a couple of ways that you can find the report. You can see here that there are 24 different templates in here. So you could just, read through the list. They are alphabetical, I believe. So it should be, relatively easy to find them. And there are a lot of different versions of the inventory list. So, it's you have a few different options. The one that I'm going to recommend to you here, just because it's the one that I've triple checked to make sure that it's working exactly as we want it to after the upgrade, is this one, this items by only library, shelving, location, and status. And the way that I'm going to find it, rather than reading through them, is I'm going to use this little upside down tree menu to filter. So I'm going to filter on the name, and I'm just going to filter it down to inventory. And of course, a lot of these have inventory in their name, so it's not going to get us down to just one, but it's going to reduce it down to 4. So then I can find the one I'm looking for, which is this fourth one here. And I'm going to go ahead and clone this into my own account so that I can then run my report when I'm ready. So I'm going to clone this template, and I'm going to call this my March 2025. I'm just going to put that in my training folder and save it. And we'll come back and look at this in more detail in a few minutes. For now, let's go back and let's look at the actual inventory process. So I'm going to move into our next database for this. And the inventory process, as I said, is basically once you have a mobile check-in station set up, it's basically checking items in, going down your range and just scanning each barcode. So to do that, we're going to come to our circulation menu, and we're going to choose check-in. So this is the same page that you would have up when you're checking items in, from the book drop or at the desk. So we're going to be on this check-in items page, but then we're going to come down here to this menu at the bottom that says check-in modifiers. And so these are all of the different things that you can do to kind of change exactly what happens at the point of check-in. And the one that we're going to choose is update inventory. Now, if you are doing a wide-scale inventory project where you're sort of inventorying your entire library, you may want to have this check-in modifier applied at your regular check-in. So just when you're pulling items out of the book drop and checking them in, you may want to have this so they're automatically inventoried. I think the decision to do that is based kind of on how quickly you're getting through the inventory, how large your collection is, exactly what you want to know in terms of location of items and things like that. But if you do want to make sure that you're getting that inventory date on everything as it's coming in as well, then this is a good way to do that rather than kind of re-inventorying again or something like that. So I've got my updated inventory check-in modifier applied. And so at this point, it would just be scanning the barcodes as I normally would when during any sort of check-in event. But in this case, obviously, I'm just pulling them off the shelf to check them in. So let's grab a barcode here. And once I have my barcode, I would just scan it into the field. So now if I go into this item itself, I'll find that it has been inventoried. So the process is fairly simple. I mean, in this case, it wasn't because the barcode that I had happened to be checked out and so therefore has accumulated a large number of fines. That wouldn't normally happen in an inventory process. I think I used the same copy when I was practicing this a little while ago. And so it has, it's added up. But so this copy would then be inventoried, and when you run your report, it's going to show up as with an inventory date, and so it's not going to be on your list of missing items. So that's the process. It's fairly straightforward. Are there any questions about the check-in modifier or anything like that? Feel free to raise your hand, and I can unmute you, or just put it in chat is fine as well. All right, well, let's go back into our report then and take a closer look at what's going on with that. So you go down your range, and I recommend that you do this sort of by shelving location. If you are interested in kind of breaking up a large shelving location into smaller sections within it, there isn't a way to sort of add a call number to the report that we're going to look at. And if you're interested in doing that, I will show you how to. Only really necessary if you're in a very large shelving location. You know, if you have a shelving location that you can knock out the inventory in a couple of days, I would recommend avoiding the call number modifier. Any additional filter that you add to this report is just a little bit more room for potential error in the report. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. So if you don't need to break it up into call number ranges, I would recommend not. But obviously with a very large collection like your entire adult nonfiction, you're probably going to want to do that simply because by the time you get through inventorying that entire shelving location, you're going to be, you know, the items will have changed a lot in terms of what's on the shelf and what's checked out and everything like that. So I took that template that I found earlier and I cloned it. And so now I would just want to run it. So the process of running the inventory report is just like any other report. So if you are familiar with reports, this process will seem fairly familiar to you. But if you're not, then I'll walk us through each step of it. So to run the report, the first thing you need to find is that cloned template. And so you do need to clone the template that you've taken from that shared folder rather than running directly off of the original shared one. So if you're not familiar with that process, it goes into a lot of detail in some of the earlier training webinars and videos. So, but feel free to ask me any questions about it as well. So to run it, I'm going to find the template and I'm just going to double click on it. And this opens up an interface where I can set up my filters. So the filters are basically telling the report what data specifically to bring up. And so in this case, what we really want to tell it is I want all of the items that are in this shelving location that I just inventoried that are not marked as inventoried. So this is going to be essentially a list of missing items. And so the first thing I need to do is determine which shelving location I inventoried, and that's my location ID here. So I'm going to come up here to the filter value, and I'm just going to choose from the drop-down menu the shelving location that I've just done. And so I'm just going to do adult fiction. And then I do need to click this add button. And so once I've done that, I can see the shelving location that I've done. Now, if you do have a number of very small shelving locations and you're going to be doing them all at the same time, you know, such as, you know, your audiobooks or foreign language collection or something like that, you can put all those shelving locations in at once. So I could have adult fiction and then throw in adult biography as well. I'm not going to do that because adult fiction is fairly large on its own, but I could add additional ones. I'll show you what it would look like if I did. So if I added this second one, now I just that's just been added to my list down here. And if I decide I don't want it, I can just get rid of it. So the first thing I'm doing is telling the report, this is the shelving location that I've just inventoried. The next thing that I'm doing is that I want to make sure that my report is not going to bring up a list of items that are checked out or on hold or anything like that. I only want items that were expected to be on the shelf, meaning that they have a status right now of available. So I'm going to choose here for my copy status, available. And I'll do the same thing and I'll click add. That's the only copy status you generally want for this. Because that means it's on the shelf. Pretty much anything else means that it's going to be somewhere other than the shelf. So really all you want to add here is available. And then of course I want to choose which library I'm at. You know, if I've just inventoried my collection at one of my branches, that's the only stuff that I want to see coming up in this report is that specific branch where I inventoried. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to choose a branch. And so, of course, you have the ability to choose multiple branches, but more than likely, when you're talking about inventory, you're going to want to do this one branch at a time. And then I can choose my inventory date. If you're a library that sort of does a constant inventory, this is going to be really important because you want to make sure that you're not pulling up items that were inventoried last year. So their inventory date isn't blank, but it's over a year old. That would still be potentially a missing item. So if you're a library that doesn't inventory, this is your first inventory ever, this date field isn't very important. You can set it, you know, kind of to whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to set mine to, I know that I inventoried, let's say I inventoried last Friday. So I'm going to set the date needs to be last Friday. And so basically what this does is that it will pull up all items from the adult fiction shelving location that are listed as a status of available at the Henderson main branch that either have no inventory date at all or the inventory date is before March 8th. So I inventoried on March 8th, which means that anything I found on the shelf will have an inventory of March 8th. Anything that has either no inventory date or an inventory date prior to my inventory is potentially a missing item. So that's what I've set here. Does that make sense? Is everybody kind of following that concept? Now, if you've never inventoried before, theoretically, you could actually redo this report and remove this. If you're familiar with the reporter and you're comfortable doing that, you could create your own version of this report that does not have this filter on it at all. But if you're not comfortable with reports, then just go with this filter and set the date that you inventoried and you'll be fine. All right, so I'm going to click next. And then for those of you who have not done a report before, you do need to save where that report will be and choose where the output of the report, so the actual files that you'll be downloading, will be saved to. And again, all of that is going to be covered in our reports webinars, so you can kind of go back and get some information about how to get that set up. And then I definitely recommend including an email address in case something goes wrong. And you can choose, you know, if you want to send your inventory report to other staff, to your director or to the staff who actually conducted the inventory, you can add as many email addresses to this as you'd like to. So you would just separate them with commas. And then you click Save and Schedule Report, and it will run immediately. All right, so Deborah has said that in the report they use the latest inventory date, which is as their filter. And they use an operator of not between. So basically, I assume you're setting kind of the range of dates that you conducted an inventory rather than just a single date, which makes sense with a larger collection where you're probably going to be inventorying over the course of a few days. That makes a lot of sense. And we can actually talk about how you could update this report to reflect that particular option in a minute. So that makes a lot of sense if you're going to be doing kind of a larger collection that takes multiple days. All right, so this is running. I don't know how quickly it's going to run. We'll take a look. Oh, it's already finished. Is that because it has an error or because it actually finished? All right, I'm going to let that kind of load for a minute. Oh, no, there it is. All right, so I have here, I've got two different output options that I've selected. So a CSV would download a file, which is probably what most of you are going to do so that you can actually take that file and work with it. And I'll show you kind of the next step in a second too, which does involve the CSV. But first I'm going to click on HTML. This is just kind of my preference for what to do with reports because it allows me to just double check that everything looks correct before downloading the file. And so I'm, just looking through here, making sure that this seems to be, this is adult fiction. These inventory dates are older than what I said. Obviously, this is Henderson, and Henderson has recently inventoried, so I'm seeing stuff that's probably actually there. But, I'm also seeing stuff that was last inventoried in 2020, so that is a potential missing item. It's got a status of available, but it was last inventoried in 2020. So if I've inventoried since then, this one may be missing. This one has no inventory date. So that's kind of what I'm looking for with this report, are those items that were either have no date at all, like this one here, Tobacco Road, or the date is from a previous inventory process, not this one that I've done most recently, which of course I had set as March 8th. So in this case, these are all items that basically were not scanned when I took that mobile check-in station out. So these are all items that potentially are not on the shelves, even though they're listed as being available. So at this point, the next thing that I'd want to do is actually turn, well, I'd probably want to go out to the shelf and do a double check to make sure that all of these potentially missing items are truly missing. Just kind of do a shelf check for each of them, inventory them if I do find them, and if I don't, then I take that final outcome, and I want to mark these all as missing. So that's our final step. And this is one that you may or may not actually do, depending on what your goal with this inventory is. But in order to do that relatively painlessly, I say relatively, I'm going to download this as a CSV. And then I'm going to just open it up. And so you'll see that it opens up looking like an Excel file, but it is a specific text file that I can actually upload into Evergreen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete everything except the barcodes. So obviously, if you want to have a full list that you save, you might want to save that as one file and then make a copy that you're going to remove all the barcodes from. And I'll delete these as well. And so now all I have is the barcode. I'm actually going to delete the barcode column header as well. And with the CSV, I don't think you actually have to fix this. I think Evergreen will know what to do with it when you upload it, but just to show you what to do if you see this weird formatting. If you come up here to your to how your numbers are formatted, change this to a number, and then just remove your decimal points, and it's going to give you your barcode. So these are the barcodes of all those items that are potentially missing. So I'm going to save this. Save it to my desktop so that I can find it very quickly. All right, and then I'm going to come back into my Evergreen. I'm going to try anyway. There we go. I want to make sure I'm in next for this. And I'm going to come to my item status page. So from the circulation menu, I'll choose item status. And this option here, choose file, I'll click that. I will find the text file, the CSV that I've just created. Open that up. And it's going to upload that entire list into my item status screen. And I didn't check to see how big this list was. It might be a little too large. Yep, I'm actually going to go back and make this a little smaller because it's going to take forever. Just cut down all of these. Yeah, this was thousands of items. I'm sorry about that. I should have cut this down first. That'll be much better. All right, let's save this again. And let's try that upload again. So I'm going to choose the same file, but it's now much smaller. I might need to refresh this page. There we go. Yeah, that's much better, isn't it? So now I've put all of those barcodes into the item status screen. I can just kind of do a quick little look down here. Looks like one of them, oh, I'm in next. The report I pulled was live, which means that sometimes the statuses may not match between them. I'm just going to remove this checked out item. Never mind. Okay. So with so few in this case, I could just mark them as missing from the item status screen. But obviously in a real inventory situation, you're probably going to have a larger list. Hopefully not. Hopefully you're not missing anything. But if you do have a larger list, then the next thing to do is to create a bucket, which you can do from this screen. So to do that, I'm just going to select everything by checking this box up here at the top. I'm going to go to the Actions menu, and I'm going to add to Item Bucket. Make sure that you're making an item bucket, not a record bucket. And I'm going to call this Missing 03-2025 and add to new bucket. And so once I've done that, I'll just move into my bucket. Buckets are under the cataloging menu, and I'll choose Item Bucket. And so once I'm in this interface from the buckets list, I should be able to find the one that I just created, Missing 03-2025. And these are all the items that I just uploaded from that CSV file. So in general, if you ever have a situation where you're trying to create a bucket from a report, that's the process you can do that with, whether it's an item or record bucket. And there's a very similar process for doing a user bucket. It's actually a little bit easier for users. But it's basically just getting a CSV file of barcodes, and then in this case, uploading them to the item status screen and turning the item status screen into the bucket that you need. So in this case, of course, this is an item bucket, and then I can just select everything in the bucket, and from my action menu, I can edit my selected items. And for those of you who have not batch edited items before, this is what that looks like. You're basically getting this item attribute screen just like you would for a single item. But you can see down here, I've got a bunch of barcodes here. So this is multiple different items being edited here. So, you know, I would recommend maybe not doing 1,000 at a time. I'm not sure what the right threshold is. A lot of it's probably based on what you feel comfortable doing at once. Like me personally, I probably wouldn't do more than 10 at once. Other people might feel more comfortable doing more. So you can still do them quite quickly, but I just would recommend not doing a huge number because you can see this is only 9 and it's already cut off the last barcode here in the barcode field. So just for the sake of feeling like you're doing everything right and that you're comfortable with everything. And then all you have to do with your item status is, oh, I need to get rid of that checked out one. I'm going to do this again without the checked out one showing. So then I just change my item status. And so I change it from available to missing. And because checked out is one of those statuses that you can't change, I wasn't able to change anything because that checked out one was was in this list. So that's why I had to make sure that it was removed from the list. And I apply, and now all of these copies are marked as missing. So if I were to go back and rerun that same inventory report, then these 8 copies actually wouldn't show up on it anymore because they're no longer in a status of available. Yeah, so Benjamin mentioned that you can mark items missing from the item status screen. And so with such a small list, 9 items, that's probably what I would have done. So you just, let me get back to that status screen. But if you have significantly more, you might want to keep them in a bucket just to make sure that you kind of have all of them together. Or if you're doing multiple runs and you just want to do all the missing together at once from every different section of your inventory, a bucket is a way to do that. But I will show you how to do it from the item status screen. I'll have to re-upload. So basically, I would just come in here. I would choose the ones that I want to update, obviously not the checked out one. And from the actions menu, there is an option in here to mark items missing. So I can do that here as well. So multiple different methods of doing the same thing. Okay, and Deborah pointed out that they do a monthly report of missing items. And so by doing this, those items then did show up in their monthly reports. So if you have sort of a process in place to track missing items, this will feed into that process fairly seamlessly. All right, so that is method number 1. Benjamin suggests splitting lists into sets of 100 for item status, which I think is a smart idea. It's an extra step, and so that, and anytime you add an extra step to stuff like this, there's an extra opportunity for things to go wrong. So if you do have a very large list, again, that's a reason to do a bucket, but a smaller list, as long as you, item status really starts to get funky past 100 items. So under 100 items, you can probably do this from item status. Beyond that, I'd suggest a bucket, just to avoid things going wrong. And then also if things do go wrong, it's already in a bucket, so it's easy to find. All right, any questions about that process from the report to the bucket or going back to that check-in modifier? All right, well, before we move on to the second method, which is I think a little less common, but kind of allows you to do shelf reading at the same time, I do want to show you one extra thing that you can do with the report if you are so inclined. And that is to add a call number filter. Now, this is not something I recommend you do unless you're doing a very large shelving location and but you want to kind of check your inventory as you're going so that you're not having a long lag time between when you start a location and when you finish it. You can basically chunk it out by call number, which is a really helpful way to do inventory, but the report is tricky. So if you're comfortable with reports and you feel great about doing this, go ahead and do it. If you are less comfortable, there is more room for error in this report. Just be aware of that. So the way that you do this, I'm going to come back to that same report that I cloned earlier. And I'm going to open it up as a clone. So I'm going to choose to clone this template. And I'm just going to put here a marker with call numbers. I'll save it to the same spot. And what I'm going to do here is I already have a display field for my call numbers somewhere right here. What I want to do is add a filter, and this will allow me to only pull out items from a very specific call number range within the shelving location. So that both the shelving location and call number range will be part of this, which means that if you're pulling out, all of your 800s, it's only going to do that from adult nonfiction. If you have 800s in adult large print nonfiction or 800s in juvenile nonfiction, those won't be included because the shelving location filter is still there. So you're basically filtering now on both shelving location and call number range. So to do that, we're going to come to our filters. Bear with me because I don't do call number filters a lot. So I'm going to come to my item table over here, and I'm going to look down to call number, and I'm going to pull that out. And I believe if I look under the Dewey classification, it may be there. Yeah. So under Dewey classification, so I've started at item, which is where the main table for this report. I've come down to call number, and I've opened it up with the caret, and I've chosen Dewey classification. And from here, I can choose Dewey blocks and ranges. So I am going to do a Dewey range of hundreds. And so this is now, this filter has been applied. And I'm going to do it between. So I can start at one end, and then I can do kind of multiple ranges. And I'll save this. And then I'll open it back up. And I'm going to run it again. So again, I'm going to double click on the template, and this will open up where I set my filters. And this time I'm going to choose adult nonfiction. There we go. And again, I'm going to click the add button. Available. Do my same library. So I was working with Henderson, Maine. My inventory date, I'm going to go back a little further on this one. And then I'm going to put in my Dewey range. So I'm going to go from 100 to 300. And I believe this is going to be inclusive. So basically, I'll get all of my 100s, all of my 200s, and all of my 300s. It won't stop me at 300. That's what I get when I choose this range. Not 100% certain about that. We'll all find out together when we look at the output. All right. So that's running. While that runs, are there any questions? All right, well, let's go on and talk a little bit about the second method of doing inventory with Evergreen while that runs in the background. A call number table or a call number report is going to take a little longer than the first one that we did. One word of caution with the call number report. It's not as big a deal with the Dewey ranges, but if you are doing a fiction call number range, the filter you add is a little different for one thing, but also when you're putting that filter in and you're defining it, make sure you're checking your spelling. Because if you have a spelling error in like an author, like a cutter number, call number range, that is not going, it'll give you incorrect data. It may give you no data at all. So just double check that. And that's the first thing to troubleshoot. If you have run a report with a call number filter and you're not getting anything, is whether or not you have any spelling errors in the call number. And that goes for formatting errors as well. If all of your call numbers are formatted in all uppercase, that's the format you need to put in when you're creating your filter. Numbers are easier, but if you are doing a fiction call number range, you just make sure that you're putting it in exactly as it's spelled and exactly as it's formatted. And if you have something like, fiction mystery author name and you put it in as mystery fiction author name, again, you're not going to get anything because Evergreen's going to go with the exact way that it is saved in the database. Yes, you can select. So Tanya asked if you can select all shelving locations. So you can select multiple. My recommendation, if you are going to do all shelving locations, is that you actually remove that filter from the template and just don't have that filter at all, because choosing each shelving location one at a time is time consuming and a little bit annoying. So removing the filter altogether will do the same thing as choosing every single shelving location. But yes, you can choose multiple shelving locations. Deborah suggests not doing that until you've finished your entire inventory. And that makes sense, because obviously if you're pulling out things that haven't been inventoried and you haven't finished your inventory, then those shelving locations you haven't inventoried yet will show up on that missing list. But if it's post-inventory reporting, you can absolutely do all your shelving locations. I would just recommend getting rid of the filter. You can keep the display field so you can see the shelving locations, like in the actual output, but you just wouldn't be filtering on any specific one. And that's my recommendation with that, but you can absolutely choose as many shelving locations as you'd like. All right, so report method number one was that very standard, go out to the shelf and scan everything and then see what's missing. Method number two is really combining shelf reading with inventory. And this allows you to sort of make sure that everything's in the right order at the same time that you're making sure everything is actually there. It's basically the same. There are just a couple of small differences. The biggest one meaning that you're running your report first so that you know what you expect to find, rather than running the report afterwards to see what's missing. So basically you're going to select the section you're going to inventory. Then you're going to run a shelf list. So the report we did before was basically a missing list. It was a list of everything that was not inventoried. A shelf list is a list of everything that it is expected to be there. Anything that is in that shelving location that is available should come up on this shelf list. Then you'll set up your mobile check-in station. You'll apply your check-in modifier to update inventory, and you'll go down and scan all your items. But you'll shelf read as you go. So you'll be checking against that shelf list that you have. So you'll make sure things are in order by the call number, and you'll also be checking against that shelf list. And if something's not there, then you can mark it. When you find an item listed on the report, but it's not on the shelf, then you've got a couple of different options. You can just highlight it on there and then go back to your desk when you're done with it and put everything in a bucket and mark it missing. You can, since you've got your computer right there, you can just go ahead and take that barcode and type it in manually. You can also just put a little check mark or something on the printout you have, and then at the end you can run that same list that we did before of the missing, and you can check it against what you marked on what you marked by hand, because of course there's always the possibility that as you're going you find something's just been misshelved. So you mark it as missing as you go, and then you find it one range over because it was just shelved incorrectly. But this is an option. I would recommend this being an option for very small collections because it is going to take a lot longer. But I did want to talk about it because I wanted to show you the shelf list report. So let's come back into our reporter. And let's first see if, yeah, the call number one's still going. Call number reports are very slow to run. Another reason to not use this unless you really need to. All right, so to do your shelf reading list, it is in the same spot in that centralized reports templates folder under inventory and weeding. And again, it's a list, and it is inventory shelf list by owning, library, shelving location, and status. And in parentheses, it's shelf list. So again, I'm going to come into my folder, and then I'm going to do contains for my filter shelf list. And it's this first one here. So again, I'm going to just clone this to my own account. I'm not going to make any changes to it, though while I'm here, I will show you if you decided to remove that shelving location filter, Tanya. You would just come into the template, you'd come into the filters tab, you'd find shelving location, which is this one here, and you'd click this little button here, the circle with the line in it, and that's just going to remove that filter, so you won't have to set anything in order to do, in order to get a report of all of your shelving locations. So, all right, and I'll save that. And then I'll come into the same folder where I just saved it, and I'll double click on it to set it up to run. So in this case, unlike the other one where we're really looking for things that either have no inventory date or an inventory date that is older than the current inventory, in this case, what we're really just looking for anything. If it is available and it is in the shelving location that I indicate here, it's going to come up on this list. So again, I do want to make sure that I'm putting available as my copy status, because I don't want items that are, checked out or on hold to be included in this. I certainly don't want items that are lost or missing to be included in this list. Potentially a missing might be good on this list because you may find them as you go. So actually that may be a good idea. Maybe I'll go ahead and do that. So I'll add missing. And then I'll just run this the way I've run the others. It won't run until that call number report has finished, though, so we may not actually see its output. We'll see. Yeah, both of them are going. We'll see whether or not they finish by the time this is done. But that's the process of doing that. Probably not something that's going to be used heavily, but is useful if you need to do shelf reading as well. And that allows you to shelf read and inventory together. All right. Any thoughts, questions? Those of you who have done inventory recently, did you do this? Do you have other recommendations? It's always helpful to kind of hear what people are doing sort of live, as opposed to, we at Cardinal think this is a good way to do it. And I do think this is a good way to do it, but I'm definitely open to learning tricks from people who are actually out there in the shelves doing inventory. I once did an entire inventory completely by hand, and it was awful.
I'm also interested to hear from people, like, when you've done inventory, what have been the most challenging parts of it, or the most, what are the things that kind of took the most work, or the learning curves, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right. So this oh, the shelf list actually finished. I thought that wouldn't finish till call numbers had, but it finished already. So we can take a quick look at that. So this is my shelf list. You can just see, it's giving me the circulating branch. It's giving me the shelving location. It's giving me the call number, and then the general information about the book. So I can take this out into the stacks and shelf read as I go. It is not sorted by call number, so I'd probably want to download this into Excel and then sort by call number. I know Deborah has done inventory. You had some good suggestions. And I know that we had a couple of people from Cleveland and Henderson who are kind of engaged in inventory right now that signed up. I'm not sure if they're actually here. So they may have some tales from the front lines. Okay, so not too long ago, looks like Onslow uh, did an inventory with an Evergreen in 2024. How did it go overall? Was it a relatively seamless process? Were there hurdles other than just the general um, inventory can be time-consuming hurdles? So it took a long time. Yeah, that's yeah. I feel like it is as much about motivation as it is about the process that you are using. Inventory can be relatively quick if you're motivated to get it done, and it can stretch on infinitely if you're not.
We were at Caldwell County last week, and one of the things someone was mentioning was the using Bluetooth, I guess, barcode scanners. And I think that's one of those kind of little quality of life things that might make it easier, doing these kind of projects than having a corded barcode scanner. Um, I've spent a fair amount of time in my career doing shelf reading projects and that kind of stuff, and it's all the little efficiencies that you can find add up when you're considering going through a big collection.
Yeah, every little time-saving thing you can get makes adds up. Um, Tanya's saying that they inventoried in 2023 and she's done it with 2 people, she's done it with 8 people. Um, um, I don't know about that, Benjamin. Could you get Evergreen running on a tablet?
Oh yeah, it's just web-based. So yeah, you could do a tablet with a Bluetooth scanner, with a Bluetooth or yeah, scanner, and that should be enough hardware to get the job done.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a lot less cumbersome than a laptop.
I'd love to see that as a proof of concept. See
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, and Deborah's saying that inventorying after migration helped clean up some migration issues. That's a really good idea. I know right after migrating, it can be, um, you've got a lot on your plate, but adding an inventory, probably as daunting as that might feel, might be a really good idea. Let's see, I had a message, I think this one went just to me from Wright at Cleveland, that they're currently inventorying. And the biggest issue they've had is with shelving locations. Um, the message said things that are in multiple shelving locations. So do you mean like where it's not clear what something's going to be listed as their shelving location versus the where it's actually physically shelved? Okay, yeah, so that's yeah, that would definitely be an issue. It might be a good idea prior to starting any of this to run a quick report of all of the shelving locations that you use in your library, just to make sure that if all of your if you have sort of stickers and different shelving areas for genres in adult fiction, but the only shelving location you use is adult fiction, so you don't have adult fiction mystery. Um, and you don't realize that until you go to do your inventory, then that could make it frustrating. So it might be a good idea to run your shelving locations first and figure out what you actually use so that you know how those match up with your actual physical shelves out on the floor. That's a good idea. All right. Well, we are in our last 5 minutes. I will be getting this recording out at some point later this week. So those of you who may have colleagues who were not able to attend live will be able to watch it, or if you want to go back and rewatch any part of it, it'll be available for you on the NC Cardinal YouTube channel. If you do have follow-up questions or you try an inventory and want to tell us what worked and what didn't, feel free to reach out. Certainly on Basecamp. There's not an inventory group on Basecamp, but I think this could be in a lot of different places. I think just general discussion would even work just fine for this. But feel free to post or email. And yeah, definitely always looking for more information about the practical experiences of trying to apply this stuff. Um, and maybe we can put together a little tips and tricks document for the knowledge book. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here. And please let me know if you do have follow-up questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and stop the recording and let you have 3 minutes of your day back.